I hadn't planned to see her again. It was one of those cold mid-mornings when everything felt too bright. The kind of light that makes people squint and think about nothing in particular. I'd stopped by the small cafe near the bus terminal, the one with fogged-up windows and the smell of burnt espresso always lingering near the counter. It was the place I used to visit with Dylan after classes. His mom used to pick him up from here sometimes, back when everything felt simpler. That morning she was there, sitting by the window, a paperback folded open in her hand, hair pulled loosely into something between a bun and a memory. Ms. Layton. I hadn't seen her in nearly 2 years. She looked up when the bell above the door rang. For a second, she didn't seem to recognize me. Or maybe she did, but wasn't sure if she should. Then her mouth curved, small and warm, like a private smile she didn't mean to show. Ivan. Her voice hadn't changed, still soft, with that tired amusement that made every word sound half-thought. Hey, I said, awkwardly pushing my hands into my jacket pockets. Didn't think I'd run into you here. She gestured to the seat across from her. Neither did I. There was a pause. The kind that stretches, not because it's uncomfortable, but because both people are waiting for the other to decide if this is a mistake. I sat down. She closed her book but didn't move it away. Her thumb rested on the page like she meant to keep her place, even though she wasn't reading anymore. I thought you moved to the city, she said. I did, but I come back sometimes. You know, family, errands, excuses. Her laugh came out light. Excuses, huh? I shrugged. Sometimes excuses are easier to believe than reasons. That made her smile again. She stirred her coffee slowly and I caught myself watching the motion. The small, deliberate circles, the way her ring caught the light. You always knew how to make me blush, she said suddenly, almost under her breath. I blinked. It wasn't flirtatious, not exactly. It sounded like something that slipped out, an old memory brushing against the present. When I didn't answer, she looked out the window. Her reflection overlapped with the street beyond. Buses moving, people hurrying, the sky breaking into clouds. Dylan mentioned you were doing well, she said after a while. He told you that? She nodded. He's proud of you, you know. Even if he doesn't say it like that. We talked for another 10 minutes. About nothing, mostly. Weather, coffee, her job at the library. The kind of talk that doesn't mean much but feels like a hand resting near yours. When I stood to leave, I noticed she still hadn't touched her drink. The steam had faded, the surface calm. It was good seeing you, I said. You too, she replied, and for a moment her eyes softened, like she wanted to say more, but didn't trust herself to. I hesitated, then gave a small wave before heading out. The door shut behind me, the bell chimed, and the cold air caught my breath. I was halfway across the parking lot when my phone buzzed. A new message. Ms. Layton, you forgot your notebook. Want to come by and pick it up later? I looked down at my empty hands. My notebook was right there, under my arm. She knew that. I didn't text back right away. The wind moved through the trees, and the words on the screen seemed to wait. Like a door left open just enough for a thought to slip through. Her message sat unread for a while, though I kept opening it, not to reply, just to look at it. By evening I found myself driving toward her house. I told myself I'd drop the notebook off, say a quick hello, and leave before anything felt strange. It was almost dusk when I got there. The porch light was already on, soft, amber, like something from another time. She opened the door before I even knocked. I thought you might have changed your mind, she said. I almost did. Her smile was small but knowing. She stepped aside to let me in. The house smelled faintly of citrus and books. The kind of scent that makes you slow down without realizing it. I was just making tea, she said, walking toward the kitchen. Do you still take it with honey? That startled me. You remember that? She glanced back. Some things stick. We sat at the table while the kettle hissed in the background. She wore an oversized cardigan, sleeves pushed to her elbows. I noticed her nails, short, unpainted, tapping absently against the mug. She looked both tired and quietly alive, like someone who'd learned to live inside her own pauses. So, she said, setting a cup in front of me, still writing those short stories. I shrugged. Not really. Life got noisy. That's when writing matters most. The kettle clicked off. She poured water into her cup, steam curling between us like a third presence. I used to write, she said after a pause. Poems, mostly. Never showed anyone, they were sentimental. Embarrassing, I smiled. I'd probably like them. Then, she looked up, met my eyes. Just for a second too long. Then she laughed quietly, shaking her head. You shouldn't say things like that, she murmured. Why not? Because you mean them. Something in the air shifted. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your heartbeat. Dylan's photo was still on the shelf behind her. High school graduation, his arm around her shoulders. It reminded me where I was, who she was. And who I wasn't supposed to be thinking about like this. I looked down at the steam rising from my mug. Does he visit often? Not as much, she said softly. He's busy. Everyone is. There was something lonely in that, the way she said it, almost apologizing for her own solitude. We didn't talk much after that. Just small remarks about the weather, the quiet street outside, the way the porch light flickered sometimes. When I stood to leave, she followed me to the door. I handed her the mug, still half full, and she took it with both hands. Our fingers brushing for barely a second. It wasn't a touch meant to happen, but it did, warm, brief, completely unguarded. She looked down at the mug, then back at me. Thank you for stopping by, she said, her voice quieter now. I nodded. Yeah. Outside, the night air was cool and clear. I took one step down before she called after me. Van. I turned. She hesitated, then smiled in that way again, part nostalgia, part warning. You always did have a way of showing up when I least expect it. Later, lying in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. I don't know why it stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. I started stopping by the cafe more often after that night. Not to see her. At least, that's what I told myself. But she was there again. Always the same table. Same book, same half-empty cup of tea. Sometimes she waved me over. Sometimes we just nodded across the room, and sometimes that was enough. A week later, I brought her a notebook. The kind she used to keep lists in. For your poems, I said. She smiled, quiet. You remember too much. Her fingers brushed mine when she took it. She didn't pull away, not right away. Then she laughed, soft and nervous. You shouldn't spoil me, Evan. People will start to talk. I almost said let them. But instead, I said, people don't notice as much as we think. She looked at me like she wanted to believe that. But didn't. The following Thursday I walked into the cafe again. But she wasn't alone this time. A man I didn't know sat across from her, mid-50s maybe, wearing a pressed suit and that polite, rehearsed smile people wear when they're trying too hard. Her hand rested near his, not touching. Her posture was different. Straighter, guarded. When she saw me, her eyes flickered, just a second of recognition, then gone. I hesitated by the counter, pretending to check my phone, pretending not to care. She didn't look again. I left without ordering. That evening, my phone buzzed. Ms. Layton, you left fast today. I stared at the message for a long time. Then typed. Didn't want to interrupt. Deleted it. Typed again. Didn't think you saw me. Deleted that too. Final. It was in a hurry. Sent. Her reply came after a while. He's no one. Just someone I used to know. I didn't ask. Didn't have the right to. Still, I couldn't stop thinking about her voice when she said, used to. Like the past wasn't finished yet. A few days later, she stopped by the campus library. Said she was looking for a reference book, but it felt like an excuse. We ended up in the quiet corner, the one no one used except for late-night crammers. Her hand trailed the shelves absently, fingertips grazing the spines of old books. You still read these? She asked. Sometimes. Mostly I just shelve them. She smiled. That's sad. Not really. I like putting things back where they belong. She looked at me then, long enough that it felt like she heard the thing I didn't mean to say. Van, she started, then stopped. What? She shook her head. Nothing. Her voice faltered. I stepped closer before I could stop myself. Just close enough to see the tiny freckle near her collarbone, to feel the warmth of her breath mix with mine. The air between us felt fragile, suspended. Her lips parted, not to speak, maybe not even to breathe. Then footsteps echoed down the aisle. She stepped back instantly. A student passed by, glancing at us briefly, then disappearing. Neither of us moved. When she finally looked at me again, her expression was unreadable. Half apology, half warning. I should go, she said quietly. Yeah, I murmured. Me too. She turned to leave but stopped halfway, hand on the shelf. Evan, yeah. Her voice was soft, almost lost in the air between us. You really shouldn't look at me like that. And then she was gone. It had rained all afternoon. The kind that comes without warning, steady, unhurried, meant to keep people still. She texted around 6. You still at campus? I was, sitting in the library staring at words that wouldn't stay still on the page. Want a ride? She wrote. I typed I'm fine, but the cursor blinked too long before I sent it. A few minutes later, headlights flickered across the window. She was waiting by the curb, one hand on the steering wheel, the other tapping lightly against it in rhythm with the rain. The drive was quiet. Wipers sweeping in time, radio low, everything wrapped in gray. Rough day, she asked. Just long, I said. Yours, same, she smiled faintly. I almost didn't text you. Why? Because I thought maybe I shouldn't. Her voice was soft but steady. No accusation, just truth laid out between us. I looked out the window, watched droplets race each other down the glass. You're probably right. Neither of us spoke for a while after that. She parked near the overlook. That spot by the river where the city lights blurred in the rain. The sound of water filled the silence. I used to come here when Dylan was a kid, she said, almost to herself. When things got loud at home, I turned to her. She wasn't crying, but her eyes were far away, somewhere years back. I didn't know you and his dad. Didn't last, she said, cutting in gently. Some things don't. She rubbed her palms together, as if trying to warm a memory. I thought I was done feeling anything like this, she said quietly. Like what? She didn't answer, just looked at me, and for the first time didn't look away. There was something raw in it. Not flirtation, not curiosity, just the ache of being seen too clearly. I shouldn't have come tonight, I said, though I didn't move. She gave a small laugh that sounded almost like a sigh. You always say that when you mean the opposite. I don't. I started, then stopped. The truth was sitting too close to the surface. I think about you, I said finally, more than I should. Her hand froze on the steering wheel. She didn't turn, but her breathing changed, slower, heavier. You don't know what you're saying, she whispered. Maybe I do. She looked at me then, really looked, and something in her face shifted. Not surprise. Recognition. Yvonne, she said, voice low. You're too young to carry this kind of guilt. I'm not guilty. She smiled, sad and tender. Then you're not listening to yourself. We sat there in the sound of rain, both of us honed in words we couldn't afford to say. I could have reached out. Her hand was right there, resting near the gearshift, steady, waiting. But neither of us moved. The air felt charged, unsteady, like one breath could undo everything. She turned away first. Tell me, she said, her voice barely above the rain. If I asked you to stop coming around, would you? I didn't answer. And in that silence, she seemed to already know. I didn't see her for almost 2 weeks after that night in the car. No messages, no chance meetings, not even a wave from the cafe window. At first I told myself she was busy, then I told myself it didn't matter. By the 3rd week, I stopped going to the cafe altogether. But she was still everywhere. In the way the light hit the empty table near the window. In the sound of the rain against my apartment window. In the taste of tea I didn't even like anymore. It was Dylan who broke the silence without meaning to. He called one evening. A voice I hadn't heard in months. Hey man, weird question, he said. You remember that cafe near the bus stop? My mom's been spending a lot of time there again. Alone, mostly. Just keep an eye on her if you're around. Yeah. My throat tightened. Yeah, sure. He kept talking, but I wasn't really listening. I was stuck on again. When the call ended, I stared at my phone a long time before typing her name into my contacts. My thumb hovered over the screen, then locked the phone. The next morning I walked past the library. Her car was there, that same old silver one with the cracked side mirror. I stood by the door for almost 5 minutes before going in. She was at the circulation desk sorting books. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her face calm, unreadable. When she looked up, her eyes flickered. Recognition, surprise, and something she quickly tucked away. I said, Her tone was polite. Colder than I remembered. How've you been? Fine. A pause. And you? Good. She nodded, eyes dropping back to the stack of books. I wanted to say something. Anything to bridge the space between us, but the words felt too heavy, too exposed. You stopped coming by, she said finally. Thought maybe I should. Maybe you should've, she murmured. The quiet between us was different now. It didn't hum like before, it echoed. I noticed a manila envelope on the counter beside her. My name written on it. Before I could ask, she pushed it toward me. You left some of your old essays in the office. I thought you'd want them back. I took it slowly. You could have texted. I didn't think that was a good idea. Why? She looked at me then, eyes tired. Because you make it hard to remember where the line is. Something in her voice cracked, just barely. And that was worse than shouting. I left the library without saying goodbye. Outside, the air was dry and cold, full of early autumn light. I sat on a bench across the street, envelope unopened, phone in my hand. The last text I'd sent her was still there. Thanks for the tea. Unanswered. I started typing something new. I miss you, I'm sorry, tell me this isn't over. Then stopped. The message stayed half written, blinking, like it was waiting for permission that wouldn't come. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was almost evening when I saw her again. Outside the cafe, same window seat, same book, only this time she wasn't reading. Just sitting there, looking out at the street like she was waiting for something she didn't expect to arrive. I stood across the road for a long minute, deciding whether to cross. Then she looked up, and our eyes met through the glass. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. That was enough. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cinnamon and old espresso. She didn't say anything when I sat down. Just moved her cup aside, making space. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said finally. I wasn't sure either. The quiet settled again, but this time it felt different. Less like distance, more like something being rebuilt carefully, word by word. I owe you an apology, she said. For how I handled things.
Yeah.
She exhaled. I do. I thought ignoring it would make it easier. But it didn't. Her voice wavered, barely. I could tell she'd rehearsed this. Probably a dozen times in her head, changing the order of sentences until the truth sounded polite. I was scared, she said. Off what people might think, of what I might start to think. Her hands rested flat on the table, palms open. No rings this time, I get it, I said quietly. You have your life, your son, everything that comes with that. She smiled faintly. You make it sound like a punishment. Sometimes it looks like one. That made her laugh, soft, surprised, almost relieved. I miss this, she said, her tone gentler now. The way you notice things. I looked at her then, really looked. The tired eyes, the little crease at the corner of her mouth, the way she folded her napkin over and over when she was trying not to say something. You still think about that night? I asked. Her fingers stilled. Every day, she admitted. Not because of what almost happened, but because of what didn't. The words hung there, trembling between us. She didn't move closer, but her hand drifted, slowly, cautiously, until her fingertips brushed the edge of mine. Not a hold, just contact. I can't promise anything, she said softly. Not a story, not a future. I'm not asking for one, I said. Yes, the truth, she nodded, eyes glassy. The truth is, you remind me that I'm still here. That I can still feel something real. That was it, no confession, no grand gesture. Just a truth so small it could have fit in the space between our hands. The silence stretched, full but not heavy. When she finally looked up again, there was something peaceful in her expression. Not joy, not sadness, just acceptance. Okay, she asked quietly. I nodded. Okay. We sat there until the cafe lights dimmed, neither of us moving, both knowing that whatever this was, it had already changed us. Not love, not exactly. Something quieter. Something that knew when to stop speaking. Time passed the way small changes do, quietly, without announcement. Autumn folded into winter. The rain slowed, the cafe switched from iced drinks to warm spice lattes, and the window seat by the glass was sometimes empty, sometimes not. We didn't fall in love overnight. We didn't even call it that. She went back to teaching at the library's adult reading program. I started writing again. Nothing ambitious, just essays and short pieces that no one would ever read, but they were steady, Real, like something worth returning to. Sometimes I'd stop by the Thay at 8:47 a.m., the same time I used to see her years ago. Sometimes she'd already be there, a mug of black coffee in front of her, reading something she pretended not to be halfway through. And every time, her eyes would lift just before the bell above the door rang, like she knew. We never sat the same way twice. Sometimes across from each other, sometimes beside. The air between us felt lighter now, like we'd both made peace with not knowing what to call this. One morning, snow dusted the sidewalk outside. She reached over, took my cup without asking, and tasted my coffee. Still too bitter, she said, wrinkling her nose. You still put too much honey, I replied. That earned me a smile, the kind I hadn't seen in a long while, not guarded, not careful. Just her, as she was. I don't think we ever figured out what this is, I said after a while. She tilted her head. Does it matter? I thought about that, about everything that had happened between the silences. The car ride, the text unsent, the nights I replayed her voice in my head. No, I said finally. I guess it doesn't. She leaned back, watching the snow fall. Maybe that's the point. Her hand found mine across the table, small, steady, not for comfort, not for apology, just presence. Months later, I'd pass by her house sometimes, the same porch light, now fitted with a warmer bulb. Once, she called me over to help fix a shelf. We didn't talk much, just worked side by side, the smell of tea drifting from the kitchen. When I left, she stood at the doorway, the light from inside framing her in soft gold. "Avan," she said. "Yeah. You still make me blush," she murmured, almost smiling. And I did what I always did, smiled back without answering. Because some words don't need echoing to be true. I still go to the cafe on quiet mornings. I write, watch the street fill, and wait for that small moment, her reflection in the window before she turns, before she waves. Not love, not exactly. Something steadier. Something that lived between cups of tea and unfinished sentences. And when I catch her looking, both of us pretending we're not, I think maybe this is all love ever needed to be. Just two people, still showing up,